Hello everybody, a very warm welcome back to the MEC-TEC garage. We're back on Project Plonker today, the old 3-wheel van, and we're going to continue on with the progress that we started on in the last video of getting this thing actually running and driving. So in this episode we're going to be doing the fuel tank, starter motor, alternator, fuel line, pedals, and then possibly that might be the chassis complete then. I'm just trying to think of obviously all the bits and bobs I can do while it's apart to make it easier access wise for me to do, because as you can see I'm not a small chap and this is a small van, so the more we can do with it apart it's going to be a lot easier for me. So without further ado, let's not waffle on, let's get some work done and see if we can get this thing on the road this year. That is the plan. Let's crack on. Right, you think it'd be easy, wouldn't you, to fit a nice new rad to a nice new chassis and a fan? It's not anything complicated. Well, I'll just let you know now, I've spent a day on this so far sorting this out. When I tried to fit, well, when I fitted the fan, no problem at all. That's 3 bolts on the front of that water pump there, and came to put the fan on, wouldn't fit, it's too close, the fan was hitting the rad. I was like, here we go, what have I done wrong? So obviously I re-welded all this chassis up, and I'm thinking to myself, I've welded things in the wrong place, this, that and the other. So I had a look around, and these mounts were right forward on the engine. So I've managed to get that back a bit. It's about halfway in between the, bang in the middle of the hole now, effectively, because there's a slotted hole in these. So it's bang in the middle of them holes now, which gave me a little bit. And then what I've had to do, as you can see there, I've had to elongate the holes in the brackets. I assume I must have welded them slightly too far back when I put them on, and obviously it didn't fit. So now I've elongated the holes, I've touched them in with cold zinc gal spray, and also touched them in with some RAL 9007, which is this colour. I had it made up in an aerosol ages ago when I had the DeLorean chassis done, so I touched in around the holes with those as well, so it won't rust around those where I've obviously elongated them. I didn't time lapse into this because it took me, as I say, pretty much a day to sort it out, and I used an air saw, this little air saw, which used to belong to my mate Dan, that I bought off of him, so thanks Dan for that. Cut 2 little grooves from the original hole along, and then cut it diagonal each way, and then I used a stone wheel, little stone wheel and a Dremel to finish it off and smooth it all out. So now it does actually fit and it all goes on properly. So I'm hopefully going to get this bolted on for the last time. You can see the rad fins have got a little bit damaged. I've actually straightened them all back up. They look good when you look straight on, but when you look down on them they look damaged, but they're not. The fan, obviously where it hit the fins slightly when I first bolted it on, obviously bent a few of those little fins on there, so I've straightened them all up best I can. That'll all be absolutely fine. And yeah, so I'm going to get that bolted in there now, and hopefully that is the end of that job, because that was a bit of a nightmare, and I was having kittens that I didn't think it was all going to fit, and I thought I was going to have to start cutting bits off and re-welding and all the rest of it, which is not ideal when you've had the chassis galvanised and powder coated. So there we go, let's crack on and get this fitted. There we go, rad and fan is now on, and I think that is a pretty acceptable clearance. As you can see, it spins no problem at all. Now another problem I had was, because this fan is second hand, this blade was bent out slightly, so it wasn't equal. So I've heated that up and bent it straight again now as well, so that should be absolutely fine. All I can do is cross my fingers and hope that it doesn't hit. Obviously the rad hose at the top there will be a bit of a squeeze, but then they always are, so that's no problem. And we've got a hose to go on from here to here as well, and that should go on there, no problem at all. So with that job done, the lacquer has now turned up, so I think we can turn our attention back to getting the rest of the underbody satin lacquered, and then at least I can forget about the underside of the shell then, and I can concentrate on getting all the bits and bobs on this lovely looking chassis that's coming together now, ready to go, and then it can all go back together again and make the damn thing drive. Then we've got to sort the paint out. There we go, top banana. Right, the underbody of the van is now completely lacquered. That is done. I'll show you some shots of that at the end of the video so you can see what it looks like now it's all complete. But in the meantime, we need to carry on putting bits and bobs on this chassis. So we're going to get the starter motor on next. Got a nice new starter motor, as you would have seen before. It basically just slots in here and is held on with 2 bolts. I'm using M10s for this. I've got stainless steel ones as well, so hopefully they won't bind up. And we've got nice washers, spring washers and stainless steel nuts to go on there as well, so it should look absolutely superb. Not that you're going to see it when it's on there, but still it's nice to know that it looks nice if anyone does stick their head under the van or whatever else, then it'll look good. So there we go, it's easy as that. I'm just getting these 2 bolts in. Just tilt you down a bit so you can see. You can't really see under here anyway, but there's a bolt under here, so there's only 2 hold it on. So I'm going to get this bolted up, and then we're going to move on to the fuel tank. I think fancy having a go at that next, because that's been in the garage for ages and taking up room, and obviously now it's powder coated, I want to get it fitted to the van so that it doesn't get damaged. So because obviously it's a lot less likely to get damaged being on the chassis than it is sitting in the corner of my garage. So right, I'm going to get these done up and I'll come back to you when we're on the fuel tank. Rightio, as you can see, we've got a nicely powder coated tank here. This is the stainless steel rod that I ordered, which I've actually put a thread on both ends of now. I used to use an M12 tap on that, so both ends have got a thread on them now. This slides right through the middle of the tank, through this hole here, and goes through these 2 brackets. This one here, see my hand just in the corner of the screen, and the other one over there. Hopefully you can see that on there. Hang on a second, let me tilt you up. you can see there's two brackets. The front one is the one with the big rod going through, the rear one is for the bolts to hold onto these rear tabs. So yeah, I've done a little bit of prep work on this. I've got it so that everything hopefully will bolt together fairly easily. I've cut some washers out so that it fits on, or sorry, fits the chassis shape of the tabs, because I only had big washers, so I've cut those so they've got flat sides on, so they'll fit on those tabs nice. So basically I'm just going to sort of thread all this through, get it bolted on, and hopefully we shouldn't have any problems. As I say, I've had it on and off a couple of times previously, just to make sure that everything was going to fit. I've got these nice dome headed M12 nuts to go on the end of the threaded rod, so it'll look nice and tidy, along with a spring washer. And obviously for the little bolts I'm using these little hex headed M8s, which are nice looking little fixtures as well. So I'll get all this bolted on, I'll come back to you once it's on there and show you what we got. Right, there we go. That is the fuel tank in, hopefully for good. We've got our nice dome-headed nuts as I showed you there. I've got to just tap that washer around very, very slightly because it's just twisted slightly when I did the nuts up. I had to take the exhaust back off, as you would have seen there, just to loosen this bracket off so I could get to the head of this bolt. That's all sorted now. And this one did fight me a little bit because the powder coat was a little bit thick in the hole. I drilled it out, but obviously not enough. So we've got that knocked through and that's fine now. So that is absolutely superb. It all looks absolutely good and lovely jubbly. So that is another job off the list. Not sure what the next one's going to be, but the list is getting smaller, which is absolutely superb. And obviously that tank being in there now means it won't get damaged in the garage, which is absolutely great as well. So lovely jubbly, let's carry on. Right, I've done this off camera mainly because I didn't know how it went. The alternator is now on. I'll just try and show you under here. It's got weird spacers on it which you have to put in to obviously space it to the correct position. That one's got a spacer at the front under there, as you can see, in the middle of the metal plate and the alternator itself. The rear one has got that big spacer in it, and then obviously you've got your little adjuster on the water pump bolt. I was missing that actually. I had to get that. I found that in my parts, so that was handy. So I've got that bolted on there. A little bit of Loctite on the thread on the water pump just so that it doesn't back off, and obviously that is all nice and tight. The belt's all nice and tight. It all turns over nice and freely. Well, good compression on the engine. There we go. Yeah, it all turns over no problem anyway, so that's good. Obviously if it needs any adjustment when I get it going, and then obviously I'll do that, but it looks like that is all on there and good to go. So now I might try and look at getting the water pipes on. I've got obviously a water pipe from go to the water pump to the bottom of the rad, and I've also got the little short one which goes up the top there, so that may be a next thing to look at. And also in the meantime I'll just show you as well, let's walk over here. I've been painting the foot pedals to go on, you can see them hanging up there, and I've also been painting this big right angle funny bracket thing which is for the front seat belt anchor points to bolt onto that, as to bolt onto the chassis before the shell goes on. Well, it doesn't have to, but it makes it easier. So I've been painting those as well, so that is absolutely superb. So we've got some good progress going on. It is coming along really well. All I've got to do now is work out what size fuel pipe I need, and then order that, and then we can get that run, and then we're pretty much there. So it's getting there really well. I'm well chuffed with this, it's good. Top banana. Right, I just thought I'd show you what I'm doing here. I've actually got the gauge out for the van, which I've refurbed, which is looking lovely. and I've got the fuel tank sender. Now these van fuel tank senders are very hard to come by, you can't get them at all, they're not made new anymore, and although people say the mini ones work, they're actually the wrong resistance, so they don't actually work. So I'm trying to repair this one out of two saloon ones, which are different because they're longer. In fact, I've got a saloon one I can show you somewhere around here. Don't know where I've put it. It's lurking. Here it is. So this is a saloon one. As you can see, it's a lot longer because the tank is in a different orientation. It sits in the boot and this sits vertical, and obviously goes right down to the bottom of the tank with the sender on it there. Now, as you can see, there's like a copper wire that runs up the side of it. Now on my van one, this copper wire is snapped, which is this little one here. Now you can see the van one is a completely different shape because it sits in the side of the tank. So what I've actually done is took out part one of my other saloon ones that didn't work very well, and I've nicked the copper off of it, and I've just coiled it up, so rather than breaking it, because it's got the right connectors on the end of it, and I've just got it apart, and I've just soldered a new little nodule on the end of the what would you call that? It's the end of the arm of the sender, and it rides up and down. If I show you on another one, this one here, you'll see inside there it's like a Scalextric controller where it's got like a line of wire which obviously creates the resistance, and that little plate there with that little end on it runs on that on the inside of that sort of track in there. So I've put a little extra bit of solder on the end of there because it was worn quite flat and it wasn't giving a very good reading. Now the only downside to this is now, because I've had this apart a couple of times, the little tabs have snapped off the sides of the backing plate that holds this bit on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it all together, put a clamp on it, and I'm just going to try initially to solder it. If it doesn't work soldering it, then I'll have to put a couple little tacks of weld on it or something. But I'm going to determine to try and get this to work because obviously it's a proper Reliant one, and it's lasted 50 odd years, and I want to try and get it to carry on working for another, well, as long as it sees me out, it'll be alright. So it might not be the most accurate thing in the world, but at least it will give me some idea of how much fuel's in the van. So I'm going to get this put back together, get the case soldered on there, and then I'll come back to you and show you obviously it working on the gauge with my little setup with my battery here, and there we go, and hopefully it should be alright. Right, as you can see by this wobbling wire, things have escalated somewhat. I've now got the sender part split off of the saloon sender because the one in the van one I tried to repair with the solder, it still wasn't giving a very good reading. This one is the only one that's giving a good reading, so I've taken the whole unit off the side of the pipe, which is that pipe there. Obviously we don't need that bit. That was just two little spot welds, so I've just sort of wiggled it backwards and forwards until it snapped off. It was very easy to get off. Same with the van sender pipe. That's the van sender pipe, and what I'm going to do basically is weld on that sender onto the side of this pipe, and then we're going to have to modify this arm because obviously the arm's too long. We can do that no problem at all. It's only a piece of wire. We'll heat it up and bend it about and all the rest of it, and hopefully then we should have a working gauge for the van at least, so that's good. So out of 3 different senders I've managed to get one that have bits of all of them. So I'm going to get the welder cranked up. It's only going to be 2 tacks on there, and then that obviously will hold that more than strong enough because it was little tiny spot welds before and they were very weak. So a couple of tacks on there and it should be good, and then hopefully we can get this working how it should do, and get it in the tank with any luck. Let's carry on. Right, this is my little setup. I've got a little vise on the floor. I couldn't get the welder out, it's too buried, so I've had to use it where it is. I'm sorry about the noise of the welder fan, but basically that's clamped in there. We're going to put that on there, put a tack on each end of it, and that should do the trick hopefully. That is the plan. So I'm going to get this welded on, hopefully it'll work. So let's get an earth set up. Should be alright on there. I haven't used a welder for months, so this should be interesting. Let's see whether I can actually do it, and whether I've got the settings right on the welder as well. Let's just check it's working. Yep. Far too much gas. What's going on there? better. Right, ideally I'd like to get a little clamp on here, but we're just going to go full yeehaw on it and hope for the best. Totally missed it. Visor's not going where I want it to. That's the bottom on. Things to do just to get a petrol blooming sender to work. Now that's solder there, which is why that's not welding very well. It has held it though, to be fair. So what I might do is get a little tack on the back side of that there, just so that it's held. I'm going to do one more on the bottom there, just to be double sure it's going to stay. Right, that definitely ain't going anywhere. I mean, that's a million times stronger than what it would have been with them little tiny spot welds on it that it had. So let's turn that round. I'm going to grab a pair of pliers and just squeeze that so that it's flat against the pipe, so I can get a little tack on the back of it. Stay there. Where do you keep the pliers, MEC? Well, they're on the floor as usual. What do you expect? Right, I'm going to try and mount that in there. Get a little tack on the back. In fact, it might just rest in there like that. Now I'll clamp it in there, otherwise it's going to move. I know what'll happen. It'll move when I try and weld it. Right, let's try this. Get the earth on there. Difficult to see because my light, whoop, knock the camera over, trying to get my light to shine where I need to weld. It's better. That got it. That definitely got it. There's smoke coming out of that pipe, it's like a chimney. Right, well, that is mega strong on there now. I may just go double whammy and put one on that side as well, but I think we're good on that side of things. So I'm gonna just put a couple more tacks on this, probably just to be double on the safe side, and then we'll call it good, and then we can hopefully test it on the gauge. And I know this sender did work on the gauge when it was on the other pipe, so if it don't work now, I ain't gonna be very happy. Let's get another, might as well do it one on the camera, get another little tack on here. Yep, that's going to be more than good enough now. So that's got at least 4 welds on that now, whereas before it only had 2 little tiny spot welds. So that should be absolutely fine. Right, let's get back on the bench. Right, hopefully you can see this in the screen. You're looking just down here. The sender at the moment is obviously on empty. I have modified it slightly. I'll show you that in a minute, because it wasn't going right to the ends of the gauge. So that is on empty at the moment, and if I rotate this arm up, you should see that start to move. That should be about halfway, which it is. And then as you go all the way up, obviously it'll go right the way up to full. So that is absolutely superb. Now, it's never going to be as accurate as a modern car gauge, but as long as it gives you some sort of an idea of what you're running at as far as fuel, that is all you need to know. And obviously it does that more than well enough, so I'm happy with that. So I'll just show you. I'll tilt you down a bit. All I did on this gauge, how do I tilt this down without making it all jerky? Can't remember. It's been a while since I used this tripod. There we go. Right, you can see on there where the arm sits, you've got two stops, and they were bent out originally, and I thought, why are they bent? So me being me, I bent them straight. Well, I know why they were bent out now, because it wasn't allowing the gauge to go right the way to the end of its travel. So what I've done is just got a Dremel, and I just took a little bit of each one off, and now obviously it goes either way, right to the end of each way. So now I've got to modify this arm on the sender there to make it a shorter version, like the van one. I've got to coil up this little coil of copper there, because I want to keep the original connector on the end of it, same as I did on the other one, and then we should be somewhere near it. Top banana. Right, I spent a bit of time off camera bending up this arm. As you can see, there's the original, which would have sat like that, and as you can see, I've basically replicated that. Bends aren't quite as tight, but that ain't going to make any difference at all. I made a new hook on the end of it for the float to sit in, so that should be absolutely superb. So the next thing I've got to do now is I want to give this top plate a coat of paint before I put this wire back in, and I want to coil this up as best I can so it's nice and uniform, maybe around a socket or something like that, and then we can get that put back in once the paint's dry, and then it can go in the tank. I'm all I'm waiting for is a gasket, which is on its way, so that is absolutely superb. And I've also ordered the fuel pipe, so that is on its way too. So once we get the fuel pipe, we can get the fuel line run, and that will be that job ticked off the list. Top banana. Right, as you can see there, I've spent a bit of time cleaning up the top of this, so it's all nice, and I'll give it a coat of the old cold zinc galv spray, this stuff here, so hopefully should keep it protected. Only on the outside though, so there's nothing going to get in the tank. And I've just rigged it back up again just to make sure that everything still works, since I've bent that arm around and everything else. And as you can see by this, it's on empty at the moment. I've mounted it as it would be in the tank, and it works absolutely lovely. So I am super chuffed with that. I didn't think at one point I was going to get a good fuel sender out the 3, but it looks like I have. So that is absolutely superb. So once that gasket arrives, that can go in the tank where it's going to be safe and not get damaged. Lovely jubbly. Right then, that is going to be it for this episode on MEC-TEC. I'm afraid I've run out of time. I cannot get any more done on the chassis this episode. There are a few things that I did want to get done which we haven't, which would be the pedals, the fuel line, and can't think what else, but I'm sure you'll remember from earlier in the video what I said, a big list of things I wanted to get done. Still, we've made some good progress on the chassis. Hopefully in the next episode it's going to be complete, and we can think about getting this body put back on the chassis again and getting there some electrics in there and stuff like that. So that should be really good. If you do like what you see, make sure you do 4 things for me: like, subscribe, share, and hit the notification bell. It's all free, it costs you nothing. It really helps me out on the channel, so I would really appreciate it if you could do that for me. Remember, I have got Instagram, MEC_TEC1985, and I have got Facebook, MEC-TEC, for little sneak peeks during the week of what I'm up to. And all these have me to say is thank you very much for watching, and if you want to join me soon for more automotive adventures, I'll see you again next time. Cheers guys.